Hey there, friends, and welcome as Brief Cameo's Jim Clark makes Toledo Surprise, inspired by the Drowsy Chaperone.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this year's Brief Cameo Christmas special, which you'll notice is a little different than what we've done in the past. Our royalty-free Christmas stories, we're kind of running out of them. So, join me as I make something special for Christmas. We were, doing research on our upcoming show, The Drowsy Chaperone, and we found this really fun website. Colleen Renee Liss, I think is how you say it. I'll link this down below. This great actor who makes up recipes based on shows she's been in, and one of them is the Toledo Surprise Cupcake. What's a Toledo Surprise? You'll have to come see Drowsy Chaperone to find out. But I'm going to spend today making this recipe, which is 10 pages long.
You call this a little list?
And hopefully it won't be a disaster. Join me. So first off, here's all the stuff you're going to need for the cupcake itself. So this recipe has a lot of components to it. There's the cupcake itself, I love these names, the sugary yum yum crust. Again, come find out what that means. There's also a bourbon butter sauce and a bourbon buttercream brown sugar vanilla icing. It says here, first thing we have to do is make the sugary yum yum crust.
Now, let's make the sugary yum yum crust. Step 1. Combine granulated sugar, light brown sugar, and chopped pecans in a bowl.
Did you know brown sugar is just granulated sugar with molasses added to it? So if you're ever in a pinch and you need brown sugar and you somehow have molasses in your cabinet, there you go. Now the recipe also says a cup of chopped pecans, however you want to say that. I am not a fan, so I'm leaving them out, but you do you.
Step 2. Mix with a fork by hand until both sugars are incorporated into one another. This is all depending upon personal taste, so tweak as you see fit. Step 3. Set aside. Let's make some cupcakes. Step 1. Adjust oven rack to middle position and heat oven to 350 degrees.
So, first step, you take your flour. Now the recipe calls for cake flour, which I don't know about you, but I don't just have that hanging around. So it says to mix some all-purpose flour with cornstarch. Again, all the measurements will be in the recipe that I link down below. And then really importantly, sift it together. And yes, it is Christmas, but try not to make your kitchen look like it snowed all over it.
Step 2. In a large bowl, whisk together cake flour, baking powder, salt, baking soda, and 1.5 cups sugar until combined.
And that's interesting because sugar is usually considered a wet ingredient, but we're putting it with the dry ingredients. Learn something new every day.
Step 3. In a different medium bowl or large measuring cup, whisk together melted butter, buttermilk, bourbon, oil, vanilla, and yolks until combined. Set aside.
This is Four Roses bourbon, not sponsored, but hey, if you want to. It was the one that was a nice price point. There's no such thing as too much vanilla extract. Ooh, I had exactly 1 tablespoon left. Perfect. And I suppose I could have added all of that stuff to the egg yolks, but I am not great on looking at something and figuring out how big it's going to be. And whisk, whisk, whisk.
Step 4. In clean bowl of a stand mixer fitted with whisk attachment, beat egg whites at medium-high speed until foamy, about 30 to 45 seconds. With whisk still running, add in the remaining quarter cup sugar I mentioned before. Continue to beat until stiff peaks form, about 60 to 90 more seconds. Step 5. Transfer the whipped egg whites to a separate bowl and set aside.
Being careful not to deflate them.
Step 6. Add the flour mixture to now empty mixing bowl.
This is why I always ask Santa for a second mixing bowl for my KitchenAid. Santa, if you're listening. And are you really cooking if you don't get half of it on your counter?
Using the whisk attachment again, gradually pour in butter mixture and mix on medium-low speed until it is just combined, about 15 seconds. Stop the mixer and scrape whisk and sides of bowl.
Down, there's always that divot of flour at the bottom you gotta mix in later.
Return mixer to medium-low speed and beat until the mixture is smooth and fully incorporated, about 10 to 15 more seconds.
Now, it says we're gonna fold in a third of our egg whites. Now, we're all thinking the same thing, right?
What does fold in the cheese mean? He folds it in.
Step 7. Fold about 1/3 of the whipped egg whites into the batter until just combined.
Folding, you're gonna sort of make a line down the middle and fold over. And fold. It's a little tedious, but we just spent all that time whipping air into our egg whites. We don't want to deflate it.
Then add the remaining whites and gently fold in until no streaks remain. Step 8. Using a spatula, fold in the diced peaches.
So the next step is fold in the diced peaches. And you might be saying, Jim, what diced peaches? Those would be the diced peaches I forgot to dice earlier. So we're gonna do that now. There we go. So now it says 1.5 cups of frozen peaches diced. Another interesting little cooking tidbit. If it says 1.5 cups of peaches diced, you measure the 1.5 cups first. If it says 1.5 cups of diced peaches, you dice the peaches first and then measure. But this is 1.5 cups of peaches. But this is 1.5 cups of peaches diced. Now the recipe says frozen. I'm sure if we were in season, you could use fresh, not a problem. But this just makes life much easier. And I wasn't sure if we're supposed to thaw these or not, so I've just had them sitting out a little bit. We'll see what happens. Cooking should be fun and an adventure. So, and unless you give somebody food poisoning, there's really no wrong way to do it. You know, we always joke about, oh, the secret ingredient is love. But I kind of think that's true in a way. Because, for me at least, cooking for people is a way of showing my love and affection. And yes, it stresses me out. You should have seen me on Thanksgiving. But I also would have it no other way. And I think you genuinely can taste when someone has cooked you something from a place of love and wanting you genuinely to be happy with what they've made for you. And that all just goes to show, Drowsy Chaperone is a show about a wedding, which, we've announced on our social medias. We're starting rehearsals for the day after my wedding. So, Drowsy Chaperone is our 5th anniversary show. And it is a celebration of musical theater, which is the thing we love. It is a celebration of my love, which is great. So, cooking with love all makes sense.
Step 9. Line your cupcake pan with the aluminum tins. Step 10. Pour the batter evenly into the aluminum tins. Here's an insider tip. Use a 1-inch cookie scoop to plop the batter into the tins. It's far less messy than pouring directly from the bowl. Step 11. Evenly top each cupcake with a tablespoon of the sugary Yum Yum topping. Add more than a tablespoon depending upon size of cupcake pan you're using. Again, this is something you can add more or less of depending upon your taste.
So while I was putting the batter in the second tray, I thought to myself, what do you do with that sugar mixture we made earlier? Turns out you're supposed to put it on top before you put it in the oven. So, save for the first tray, doing the second one now.
Step 12. Baking time is not precise. Start by setting a timer for 15 minutes, but it's probably closer to 20. You want the cakes to be nice and golden brown on top.
So here's what they look like coming out of the oven. And we're gonna get the second batch in and start the butter bourbon sauce.
All right, friends, let's make the butter bourbon sauce. Step 1. In a medium saucepan, whisk together sugar, butter, and water until combined. Step 2. Bring to a boil over medium-high heat, stirring occasionally, and continue to boil for 5 minutes or until the sugar is completely dissolved. Step 3. Remove from heat and gradually stir in bourbon.
Okay, now that the butter and sugar and water have been boiling for about 5 minutes, time to add the bourbon. And here's where you gotta be careful, because adding alcohol to hot stuff, kind of dangerous. So you're gonna do it off the heat and very, very slowly, because it's gonna make the sugar bubble up again. Oops, spilling.
Moving on to the bourbon buttercream brown sugar vanilla icing. Step 1. In a medium mixing bowl, dice butter into 1-inch sections. Slowly sift the powdered sugar on top of the butter and mix until combined. Step 2. Add the bourbon and vanilla. Continue to mix until consistency and taste is to your liking. Step 3. As a finishing touch, add the light brown sugar until thoroughly mixed. Step 4. Add contents of bowl to a pastry bag or a quart-size Ziploc.
If you have one of these handy little gadgets, very helpful when putting stuff in plastic bags.
Set aside in the fridge to cool. And now, back to the cupcakes. Step 1. Once both batches are baked and slightly cooled, use a fork to poke each cupcake approximately 5 or 6 times to create holes all over the surface of each cake. Step 2. Pour about half of the butter bourbon sauce over the surface of the cake. Step 3. Let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes or until the sauce is absorbed. Step 4. You'll have to make a few visits to each cake, pouring some on, letting it absorb, and then coming back to it again to pour more. Rinse and repeat until all the sauce is used up.
All right, so here they are after soaking in the bourbon sauce, which smells amazing, by the way. So the next step is that's the dishwasher, because this recipe created so many dishes. Next step is to ice them. And we're not going for pretty, we are going for yummy. Which is good, because this ain't gonna be pretty.
Make sure you have a firm grasp on that Ziploc bag, but don't push too hard, or else it might explode.
Ooh, coming out both ends now. Alright, that's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Oh, it's coming out the top too. It's fine.
See? I told you that would happen.
Everything is fine. Well, I knew this was going to go off the rails at some point. Try to make that look a little bit nicer. Alright, so now these need to go in the fridge for at least 12 hours, preferably 24. So my plan is to bring these to work with me on Wednesday. What does Wednesday matter to you? You don't know that this is a Monday. Hey, it's a Monday when I'm filming this. So my plan is to bring these to work when I go back into work on Wednesday. And I'll bring you some taste tests when that happens. Okay. So here they are after a day in the fridge. Not the prettiest thing, but I don't blame the recipe. I think it was me. So let's see what people think of them. They're not the prettiest, but that's okay.
But they smell delicious. Peachy, bourbony, delicious.